Hi, I am Chong Xiang, an economics professor at Purdue, and we are talking about my joint work with Steve Epel, my co-author at Penn State. Our work remains preliminary. Now our question is, how do we measure the quality of a country's educational system? This question is important because all of us have heard from the news about discussions for education policies in the US. And those discussions happen a lot. In addition, they also happen in many other countries, right? In the UK, in Canada, in Qatar, and so on. So it's not just in the US. The existing measure that people have used so far for that purpose is test scores from PISA. Now, many of us have heard about PISA in the news. The problem, of course, is test scores are not perfect, right? We know that lots of important skills, such as leadership skills, such as non-cognitive skills in general, just do not show up well in those tests. But test scores are easy to get, right? And on the other hand, how would you measure non-cognitive skills in general for, let's say, the United States, for the UK, for South Korea, and then make cross-country comparisons? It's not obvious. And this is exactly the question that Steve and I try to tackle in our project. Our main idea is this. People have different occupations, and different occupations require different types of skills. For instance, managers give orders and directions, and secretaries follow those orders. Then engineers use their knowledge in math and science to solve problems. Now, where do we get these skills? Well, through education, of course, right? For instance, through our education at Purdue. So Steve and I organized this set of skills into two groups. Cognitive skills, where we think about the skills used by engineers and accountants. Then non-cognitive skills, where we think about those used by, let's say, managers and business professionals. Then we are able to make inferences by observing people's choices in the data for occupations. Then we can characterize the quality of educational systems along two dimensions. First, how good is the educational system in fostering, producing cognitive human capital? We call this cognitive productivity. Second, how good is the system in producing non-cognitive human capital? We call this metric non-cognitive productivity. Let's be more specific. We can compare the two metrics we have with the test score. First, let's look at the cognitive dimension. Both our cognitive productivity metric and test score measure the quality of cognitive education. But test score is a noisy and imperfect measure because it's like the outcome of a firm. Suppose you produce more output than I do. Does it mean that you have a better production technology than I do? Well, it depends, right? It depends on how much inputs you use and how much input I use. So following this line of thinking, Steve and I start from the test score, the noisy and imperfect measure, then we start a cleaning process. So we remove the effects of incentives, remove the effects of resource inputs into education. And then, after this cleaning, we arrive at our cognitive productivity metric. And so we see that the cognitive productivity is a better and cleaner measure for the quality of cognitive education than test scores. Now, of course, the question is, does this make any difference in the data? Well, it does. A number of Eastern European countries, such as Poland, have just average test scores. But Steve and I recognize that they achieved this outcome despite very limited resource inputs into education. And so we made the inference that their educational systems are really pretty good in producing cognitive human capital. Now let's switch to the non-cognitive dimension. Here, test scores are just not informative about the quality of education, right? There are many countries, such as the United States and the UK, where test scores are low, but the educational systems are really pretty good at producing non-cognitive human capital. Now, the question, of course, is always, have we got our numbers right, right? What if we messed up something and our numbers were wrong? Well, let's assume that were the case. Suppose that we just got everything wrong and test score were the perfect measure for the quality of education. Well, then it would follow that the countries with very high test scores, like South Korea and China, would be celebrating the achievements with national holidays and parties, right? But they're not doing that. Instead, they're worried. In China, for instance, they declared a ban on homework assignments for young children. And in South Korea, they declared a curfew at 10 p.m. at night about private tutoring. So what are they worried about? They are worried that students spend so much time studying for this exam and that test that they have no time left for other important skills, such as leadership skills. And that is exactly what we focus on in this project. Now, in the United States, we've had discussions, and many times heated discussions, about the education policies for a long time. Some people believe in test scores, that test scores measure cognitive skills, that test scores are easy to get. Other people believe that if we focus too much on testing, we'll be doing teaching to the test, and we'll neglect the important skills such as leadership skills. And many people believe that the United States should learn from other countries to improve our educational system. So Steve and I believe that our work has a few things to add to such discussions. Number one is, which countries should we learn from, right? If we look at the test score, then we should learn from the countries with high test scores, such as South Korea, such as Hong Kong. But we know it's not quite right because we know that the people in those countries are worried. They're worried that too much testing is going on. Indeed, our work shows that the educational systems of both South Korea and Hong Kong are not as good as the US and the UK in producing non-cognitive human capital. So, which countries should we learn from? Well, let's look at Europe. Our work shows that we should look at Finland, we should look at the Netherlands, we should look at Belgium. Well then, what should the objective be of education policies, right? Should the objective be high test scores? Well, suppose we live in a simple world where there were exactly one type of human capital. Then the answer would be yes, because high test scores would mean high quantity of that type of human capital, and that would mean high output, and that would be it. But the world we live in is more complex. We have different types of human capital, and this means we're going to have trade-offs and pros and cons about focusing on test scores, and our work illustrates these pros and cons. As an example, suppose the United States becomes worse in producing non-cognitive human capital, which is a bad thing, right? How will people respond? They will respond by decreasing learning of non-cognitive skills and by increasing learning of cognitive skills. And as they do so, test score in the United States would go up because test scores are a better reflection of your non-cognitive skills than about your cognitive skills. So we see that when we have different types of human capital, our test score could increase despite a decrease in the quality of non-cognitive education. So an increase in the test score is not always a good thing for a nation. So Steve and I believe that a better metric than test scores as the objective of education policies should be national output, aggregate output instead, because as a nation, we want our human capital to produce output so that we have higher standards of living. And here, our work is able to illustrate the effects of education policies on aggregate output. Again, as an example, suppose the United States were to learn from South Korea, and we did such a great job that we got their educational system. Then our work is able to show that in this scenario, while test score would go up in the United States, national aggregate output would go down. We hope that calculations like this would help clarify the cost effectiveness and payoffs of educational policies, not only for the United States, but also for other countries around the world.